Oh, hi all, and welcome back to the 1 Minute Farming videos. And well, you're all going to recognise this tractor. I've not driven it much since the initial videos of starting it, and I think I did one of a very short run in the yard, mainly due to the fact I've been sit mostly on the big one behind it. But things are just starting to quieten off a bit now, and so I did have it started last night. Still not starting quite as well as I would have hoped, but I think it's mainly because the engine just needs getting bedded in a bit first. The rings probably want bedding in, so I'm thinking of giving it some light chain harrowing just to put the engine under a bit of load, help bed the rings in. Now hopefully that'll just help with eventual starting it. I did notice last time I started last night was we're getting quite a bit of fuel out straight away, so it's suggesting to me that it's possibly just flooding a little bit, which could very well be a float level issue in the carburettor. So I shall look at that. But the bigger issue is, and I think I maybe mentioned it when we started it, which needs addressing quite soon, well, I'm going to address it very soon, is that we have an issue with too high oil pressure. When the engine's running, the needle is well past the H on the gauge. Now those gauges are quality gauges and are not the crappy Indian ones you get, so I'm guessing it's not going to be a million miles away to being telling me what's happening. So we need to get the oil pressure just lowered off a bit. And by lowering it down, I mean for it to run basically between the medium and high mark on the gauge. If they run with too high oil pressure, the oil tends to eventually overwhelm the mechanical screw seals that's on the crankshaft, and you eventually end up with oil coming out of the ends of the crankshaft. Now, on the old hand start tractor over there, it's quite easy to do. On these electric start models, you've got obviously you've got all the battery compartment to remove, starter motor to remove, and one or two other components because you need to get into the crankcase. Now if I go over to the old hand start tractor, well, I'm saying the old, this is actually a newer tractor than the electric one. So we need to be under that cover there, and once we get there we can get to the relief valve that's in the bottom of the crankcase and just back the nut and the stud off, and we've done it. And as I say, with the electrical start tractor, it's not quite as simple as that. You've got to, as I say, remove quite a few more components to get into that cover down there. On the later style B and subsequent tractors afterwards, they do have a little plug that you can take out of the crankcase. I think there's a plug. Or is it on the H that there's a plug? But anyway, yeah, I think on the H you take a plug out and then you can put a screwdriver through into the crankcase and you can adjust the pressure. On the Bs, as I say, I think the actual adjuster nut's outside on the side of the crankcase, which is a much cleverer idea and less hassle to get into. So I'm going to strip this down, possibly tonight if I get a chance. I'll do another quick video of it stripped down, and obviously a video of what I'm doing or what I've done and getting into the crankcase. But I'm not going to do one of taking the battery covers off and the battery. It's all fairly self-evident that. Or I'll probably take the cover off as well, but then I'll do a video of the adjustments. The problem is with either of the tractors, is once you've made your adjustment, with the hand start tractor over there, you can loosely bolt the crankcase cover on and start the engine, and after your adjustment, and if the adjustment's slightly still too high, or you maybe adjusted it too low, you can soon readjust the pressure relief valve. On the electric start tractor, of course, it's a bit of a guesstimate because you've got to put all the starter motor back on and the battery, and so a bit of a pain, a bit of a chew on really, but there you go. But no, it needs doing. The oil pressure is definitely too high. They don't need big oil pressures, these engines. They just rely on volume, so good volume of oil. It doesn't have to be high pressure. I think I've mentioned in the past 10 or 15 psi is quite adequate for them. They're not high revving or anything like that, so they're not needing big, they're not. The crankcase is taking a load, obviously. The crankshaft is taking a load on the bearings, obviously, but it's not high revving. High revving engines, they need the high pressure, a bit higher pressure. So yeah, so that's what I'm about to do with this tractor. And then once I've done that, we'll put a temporary drawbar on it, so we can pull a set of chain harrows, and then we'll go chain harrowing and see if we can get the engine piston rings bedded in a bit. I don't want to overload it. It's just a case of just quietly giving a light load and then altering the load off and on, and that will just bed the rings in nicely. So yeah, so she's looking good, looking good. I'm really pleased with the way it's turned out. I was asked regarding the modification I did on the steering. If you recall, we did away with the bushing and the two bearing surface washers that are in there, and we put a thrust bearing in. The steering is definitely lighter. So I would say that is a successful modification. We will see how it goes as it all beds in, but I think it's going to be, I think it's good. So I'm happy with that. The other modification, if you recall, was in the engine. I used those high compression aluminium pistons because at the time it's all I could get. And if you recall, I machined about, I can't remember what it was now, was it 3/8 of an inch off the top of them both, and so reduced the compression, because the engine ultimately is a low compression engine. Those high compression pistons were more for the later style Bs, and then the Model 50. Which was slightly different compression ratio, and so we machined those pistons down, hopefully reducing the compression a bit. The jury's still out on that. Worst case scenario is that those pistons were hardened in the crowns of them, and they eventually will burn through. I'm hoping not. It was not evident of that when I machined them, but we shall see. We shall see. So up to now, it's all looking good. Get that oil pressure reduced a bit, and we'll be good. Regarding the 1943 Model A, there are some more videos in the line for that. As I say, I'm really just getting back into it. I want to do this tractor with the oil pressure soon, because I want to get obviously I want to get the rings bedded in, and so I just want to concentrate a little bit more on this for a few more videos, and then we'll get back to Model A. I'm needing to get the Model A engine pulled totally, so we can get the V8 dropped in and see how it's all going to fit, if it's going to fit. But we've found a shaft to replace the crankshaft. It's outside here. But I need to get some 25mm thick steel plate to make some bearing carriers, which is hard to do at the moment with all businesses locked down at the minute with this damn coronavirus job going on. But the shaft I'm going to use, I'm going to machine it out of this old generator motor shaft here. It's got a nice big thick keyway in it, which will be useful for, and it has a big flange in the middle, which will be useful for putting the gear on. And I'm going to take this out. There must be half a ton of copper in this old generator, which hopefully one day I'll have some value again. The generator itself, unfortunately I tried to sell it and no one was interested because it's such an old style thing, but it did drop 2 liners in the engine, and so the engine buggered up really, and it was going to cost more to repair it than it's worth. And so I tried selling it for an export market, but no one was interested, and so I thought, sod it, I'll just scrap it, break it down in its components and weigh in as much as I can: aluminium, copper, steel. Yeah. But the shaft, I think, is going to have a major use to me in the V8 Model A. Okay then, so yes, that's where we are. We've just been purchasing a second-hand sprayer to John Deere one, as you can see from the colours. It's not my best buy, I've got to say. I was told when I bought it that it would go straight to work. It wasn't quite true, that. It's had quite a bit of issues with it. But anyway, hopefully we'll get it going. We've repaired most of the things that needed doing. I've rebuilt the pump for the second time. It seized on us the first time out because the bearing had been starved of oil, and then the second time it pulled a diaphragm bolt out at the top of one of the pistons. I think it had been stripped originally, and I thought it had tightened up all right when I rebuilt it the first time, but it hadn't, and so I've had to put a new piston in that. And it had a load of electrical issues. It has a lot of electrical systems on it, so that was to sort out, and other things as well. But it's the risk you take when you buy these second-hand machines. You just hope that they're going to be okay. And unfortunately, I've got my fingers burnt a little with this one, but we shall see. At least now, hopefully it should be okay. Alright then, hope that was of interest. Alright then, bye now.